Hello, and thank you for tuning into this e-learning webinar on Sticky Fingers and the Founders Syndrome, created as part of the International Charity Fraud Awareness Week. The week brings together everyone involved in the charity and not-for-profit sectors to raise awareness and share good practice in tackling fraud and financial crime. We encourage you to share this video and any of our other resources with your colleagues. My name is Ian Parry, and I'm a Senior Compliance Manager with the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profits Commission, or the ACNC. I've been with the ACNC for 3 years, and in this time I've seen the impact that insider fraud can have on charities, and I've also worked with charities to strengthen their governance to ensure they are well placed to prevent fraud and respond to fraud if it does occur. The first question I'm sure you would be asking is, why is it important for charities to be aware of insider fraud? Charities may not think that insider fraud will impact them, and I've often observed that charities are so occupied with the day-to-day business of delivering charitable outcomes that having the time and resources to consider how to combat insider fraud becomes a secondary consideration. But when you consider the adverse consequences for charities impacted by insider fraud, you understand why it's important to dedicate time to preventing fraud. Charities that are victims of insider fraud can experience financial loss. In the most serious cases, this can be a financial loss at a level which charities won't recover from to be viable. But there's also reputational damage. And regardless of the extent of the fraud, the reputational damage to a charity can be significant and impact public trust and confidence in the charity and the charity sector more broadly. A charity may see donors withdraw their support, and this has a direct impact on a charity's ability to achieve its purpose. What do we mean by sticky fingers and the Founders Syndrome? This is a particular type of insider fraud that involves an individual or individuals who are the charity founders using charity funds or resources for their private benefit. Founders Syndrome can be the result of the founders having a sense of entitlement that comes about from the work they've put into the charity. How the charity is developed may be the result of a founder's hands-on approach and tight control of charity operations, hence the term sticky fingers. I mentioned that charities may not think insider fraud will happen to them. This can be because the charity is run by a group of individuals who have high levels of trust of each other. But charities should be aware that exploiting trust can be a significant factor that creates the environment for insider fraud to occur. So let's explore a bit more the reasons why Founders Syndrome occurs. I've mentioned the importance of governance to ensure that charities have robust policies and procedures to support the work they're doing. A lack of governance can create an environment where decision-making isn't structured, and this can allow individuals to bend the rules, or even make up the rules on the run. With Founders Syndrome, we've identified sense of entitlement as a factor, and in these circumstances, it's critical that charities have well-defined policies and procedures to guide decision-making. It's particularly important to have strong financial controls and delegations to promote accountability in regards to a charity's not-for-profit purpose. Identifying Founders Syndrome can be challenging, particularly if it involves tightly held charities where the operations and decision-making is restricted to an individual or a small number of related individuals. The lack of accountability will make it difficult to identify inappropriate activities, such as misappropriation of funds for private benefit. A flag or warning sign would be where individuals are reluctant to take steps to increase transparency and accountability. This includes where charities are unwilling to recruit independent board members. Having a diverse board supports accountability and allows charities to better manage situations where there's an actual or perceived conflict of interest. For example, if a charity is operating from the private residence of a charity founder, independent board members can make decisions on how personal and charity expenses should be apportioned to ensure that the founder doesn't benefit personally from the arrangement. Let's now turn our attention to the steps a charity should take if insider fraud has occurred. The important message is to be proactive and take appropriate steps to address the fraud. Depending on the circumstances of the fraud, the approach taken by charities may be different, but there are some common approaches that charities will need to consider. Where theft of charity funds or property has occurred, it would be appropriate to refer the matter to law enforcement authorities as a first step in the charity recovering the stolen funds or property. In making this decision, charities should consider obtaining independent legal advice. Another consideration will be when and how the charity makes a public statement addressing the fraud. Where the fraud has received media attention, how the charity communicates to the public that it's taken a firm response to the fraud will be critical in restoring trust and confidence in the charity's brand. We've already discussed the importance of managing conflict of interest, and with founder syndrome, it's essential that the charity's response to insider fraud involves an independent perspective who is not swayed by personal interest. An independent person free of conflict of interest will be best placed to act in the best interests of the charity. So let's look at a couple of scenarios where founder syndrome may arise. The first case study involves loans and expenses where a charity's financial records identify withdrawals of cash and transactions for personal expenses that are explained as funds repaid against an initial loan provided by a charity founder. You can see in this scenario the importance of having strong policies and financial controls to guide the charity's decision making. The initial loan provided by the founder should be documented and supported by an independent approval process free from conflict of interest. Similarly, the use of charity funds to repay the loan should be supported by an approvals process that is documented. All expenses should be reconciled and subject to appropriate financial delegations. In the absence of records documenting the decisions and transactions, the charity would find it difficult to demonstrate that charitable funds have been used solely to support its not-for-profit purpose. It's not uncommon in this scenario for founders to have little or no documentation to support the initial loan, and this leads to poor financial accountability in managing the loan repayments. The second scenario covers a charity sharing bank accounts with a business that operates for profit and has common directors. In a situation where a charity has been established by an individual who has operated a for-profit business in the same sector, it's important to ensure that the accounts and operations of the charity are independent of the for-profit business. And where the charity contracts the for-profit business to provide services or rent office space, it's important to manage conflict of interest to avoid situations where private benefit may occur. So let's recap some of the important steps that will assist charities to avoid insider fraud and founder syndrome. First, investing in governance is time well spent. I mentioned that charities can find it difficult to devote time to governance if they're focused on the day-to-day activity of delivering charitable outcomes. But the important message is that having strong policies and procedures to support the charity's activities will lead to long-term benefits for the charity to operate effectively and fulfill its charitable purpose. Second, financial delegations should not be solely held by an individual or related individuals. A charity with robust financial controls with checks and balances will be more resilient against insider fraud. And third, independent board members. Having a diverse board with individuals that are independent of the charity's founders provides transparency and accountability to support decision making in the best interest of the charity. Thank you for listening. Please remember to check out the other free resources created as part of the week, which are available on our online hub. Together, we can keep charity fraud out. Thank you.